everybody, it's Tanisha Spain, host of Mid-American Gardener, and thanks so much for joining us for another episode. Today, we've got some great content, great show and tells, and of course, some great questions that you sent in. Before we jump in and get those questions answered, let's have our panelists introduce themselves today and tell you a little bit more about their specialty and what they're into. So Karen, we're going to start with you.
Hi, my name is Karen Ruckel, and I'm an Illinois certified nursery professional, and I love perennials, houseplants, and annuals.
Wonderful. Okay. And Jennifer Fishburne.
Hi, Jennifer Fishburne. I'm a horticulture educator with the University of Illinois Extension, serving Logan, Menard, and Sangamon counties, and my office is in Springfield in the center of the state. I can talk just about anything, but if I have a choice, I like to talk about vegetables, herbs, houseplants at this time of year, and native plants.
Wonderful. And last but not least, Jennifer Nelson.
I am Jennifer Nelson. I'm a horticulturalist. You can find me online at groundedandgrowing.com. And much like Jennifer, I can talk about lots of different things, but my favorite things are vegetables and houseplants, gardening with kids, those types of things.
All right. And as always, we're going to start with our show and tells. So Karen, we'll go with you today. What'd you bring us?
Well, I was going to talk about through the winter months, my cats love to chew on plants. So I usually grow a lot of spider plants because that they're safe for them, and they love the long leaves. There's one behind me longer. So through the winter, I'm propagating them because in the summer I forget about them. And what I've found is that what I'm doing is I'm taking a saucer that's rigid and I'm filling it with some water, and I'm rooting them first before I pot them up. Typical ways people talk about their spider plants is they just, take off the babies and plunk them in soil. But when you've got cats, they'll quickly yank them out of the dirt. So getting a good start of roots, then I pot them up, and they're a little bit more secure by the time the cat figures out and tries to pull on it.
So typically when and I see the one that you've got behind you, that's a big one there. Do you keep these inside? Do you give them away? What's your method with your spider plants?
I keep them inside. All my houseplants go out for the summer months on a northern exposure, just to get them growing nice and strong. And then, like I said, in the winter, they're coming inside for the cats. I keep some of them in a sunny basement location where the cats aren't at. And then I have a couple up in the house that they can tear apart.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move to our next show and tell item. We're going to Jennifer Fishburne, who's got, wow, that's a big snake plant.
It's a big snake plant in an itty bitty pot. One of the great things about snake plants is they will thrive on neglect. They don't have to have a lot of light. They also don't have to have a lot of water, and they also don't have to have a lot of care. But as demonstrated by the root system that we see here, this plant has just been in this pot a little bit, well, how about a couple years too long, to be honest, and it needs severely to be divided. But you can see the plant is still thriving very, very well. But because of the root system, it's really diminished the amount of potting mix that's in here. So it's time. This is a great time of year to do this, particularly because we can't get out in the garden and do the things that we like to do out there. So we want to get our hands dirty inside. Great time to divide this plant. It could either be divided or it could be potted just as is. I'll point out, you can see here in the middle, this would be a clear division here with two different plants. Also, you could use a sharp knife to cut this off. The little bumps you see along here will become roots if you pot that up. So that's a pup. So you could actually have 3 separate plants, or you can leave it as one. Normally, I would tell folks, pot this up 1 pot size bigger. Although I really don't think that's going to do a whole lot of good in this case, because I'm going to have to, before I do anything with this, I would make sure that this root system is really, really moist. So water it the day before. So I can tease these roots out straight again, or cut off some of the larger ones. So I'm going to go 2 sizes up and put it in this clay pot. Seems a little drastic, but it's necessary due to the root system that's here. So
So how many,
That's my
we
demo.
can kind of tell, I can see, but how many do you think you could get out of that one there?
You could easily get 3. I would probably do 3, just based on how tangled up all the roots are, and cut that little pup off. You could actually probably do 4. There's actually 3 separate plants. So you
Mhm.
see there that have, and this little pup off the side.
Gotcha,
But
gotcha.
I'm just gonna probably take this, I'm just gonna take this off and repot the rest of it.
Gotcha. That, you
Probably
know, so that little guy on the side, that new pup there, that's not even in the pot when you put
No.
it in there, right? It's completely out doing its own thing.
Oh, doing its own thing, looking really healthy. It's actually the
It
healthiest
is.
part of the plant. It's beautiful. It's
It
happy.
is. It is. Okay, Karen, you've got a cactus that you brought to show as well, right?
We're talking about plants that have been kind of not taken care, well, not taken care of, but that have been a long time waiting to be repotted. This poor cactus plant has been in this pot, and it's just a styrofoam cup that my nephew potted up over 6 years ago. And the pot is so broken that now he's been laying down. So I really need to do this poor plant justice.
But you know what? Like Jennifer said, some of them just kind of thrive on the neglect and just hang in there and keep on going. Okay, all right, we're on to Jennifer Nelson. What show and tell do you have?
I brought a plant that I bought this summer. Everyone has seen the whole Monstera craze on Instagram and everywhere else. And I bought a really small plant, and a lot of these plants are really expensive. I've seen Monsteras sold for over $100, and their big thing is, oh, they have these holes in the leaves. But then I have this young plant, and I paid $12 for this in the summer. There's no holes in the leaves, and I thought, well, maybe I got kind of a bad deal. But then I was reading that it takes the plant getting to a certain size and a certain age before the holes in the leaves that are the Swiss cheese look that everyone likes starts to develop. And those are called fenestrations. And I finally had a leaf that had a hole in it the other day. I spotted it while we were eating dinner, and my family thought I was nuts. I like jumped up from the table to go check it out. There's a lot of ideas of why these holes in the leaves might develop. Monstera grows in the rainforest, and so it's really competing for sunlight. And so one of the thoughts is that these holes in the leaves might allow the leaf to spread out and cover more surface area, and also let some light through to the other leaves of the plant. One of the things I was reading today said that if you remove some of the smaller leaves at the base of a young Monstera, that can encourage the Swiss cheesy leaves to develop. I don't know if I'll do that right now, but I might try it in the summer.
Interesting. I wanted to ask you a question about that. I have an established Monstera that's in the window, and just recently, out of the soil comes a leaf like that, and I thought, well, what in the world is that? Because it didn't have any of the holes in it. So is that a separate plant? Can I take that, if I dig that out? Because normally they just split from the stalks, So
Yeah.
why would that come up from the soil?
It's probably just a shoot coming off of the roots. And
Okay.
if you wanted to try to dig around and see if there's a logical place to remove it, I would wait a little while, let it get some size to it first.
Mhm.
But I can show you, this is a related plant. They call it mini Monstera, but it's a different genus. I think I showed this in the summer when I first got it, and it was teeny tiny, but this makes the same sort of Swiss cheese leaves and the holes in the leaves. Yeah, this looks like it would be really easy to propagate. You can see little roots growing along the stems, but I took some stem cuttings, and they have taken forever to root. So it may not be as easy as it looks. I'm not saying don't try it, but just be prepared. It may take a while.
Any of you ladies, in your experience, and I asked that again because I talked to a friend who says every time she's tried to propagate a Monstera, it dies. So is this a difficult plant to propagate?
I have a feeling from the mini Monstera, it's not, Monstera is not the genus, it's Rhaphidophora. I have a feeling that, just based on my experience of how long it took those stem cuttings to root, that may be why these are more expensive when you see them for sale, especially when you get a larger specimen. You think of all the time that's involved in rooting it and then growing it to that size, that translates to more cost to the consumer.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, we've got some questions that were sent in, and we were going to do this one first, but then we got carried away, and such is life. So here we go. Diane O'Connor writes in. She's got a question. Karen's going to answer this for us. She says, "How can I get my amaryllis to bloom this year again? It has 2 tall leaves on it, no flower stalks, sadly. This is its 2nd season, and I had it outside during summer and then put it in the darkness in the basement for about 2 months, then brought it out and started watering it. It is in an east window and gets morning sun. What can I do?" And I'm listening to this one as well, because as we all know, I can't get mine to bloom either. So I'm listening.
Well, for me, amaryllis, it's a love-hate relationship. I love the blooms and boy, I hate the plant. But I think one of the key things is that the plant has to rebuild during the summer. So when we talk about winter time, this is maybe the beginning and we've still got to go through another year to see if we're successful next year. But so in fall, I bring mine in before any frost that's on them. I let them dry. I typically lay them down so then that way the crown doesn't get a weird curviness of the leaves bending as they're drying down. So once they've dried down, I just forget about them. Typically when I remember them, then I'll go ahead and I'll clean off the, I can't tell left and right, I'll clean off the leaves and then just let it sit. The thing is, I think 2 months is a little short for letting it rest, because if you're just doing a couple months and bringing an amaryllis out to get it growing again in the house, we're at a low light level. So I would wait till later, late winter, maybe more February-ish timeframe to bring them out, start watering them. If they bloom, great. If they don't, wait till it's safe to put out plants more into May when there's no real cold. I like to put mine out where they get some sun, but not all day sun, because they dry out and then I forget about them. Fertilizing, I think, helps mine a lot through the summer to help try to rebuild that bulb. I've had some friends that they will dig a hole and sink the plant out in the yard to keep them, upright and to help minimize moisture loss through the heat of the summer. Then once again, that cycle of before you get a hard frost, bringing them in and then going through that resting period and then bringing them back. Now, also, I want to mention a lot of times when you get these amaryllis, they're kits. And I think the soil they have in those kits is pretty lousy. It's just typically peat. And that soil is really, really dry and repels water when it is really dry, or it's soggy, wet, and then you start rotting. So I would say either not use that soil, or after a couple of years, make sure you go to a good commercial soil potting mix to use that, and every about 3-4 years maybe repot to refreshen that soil.
So question for me. I was unsuccessful when I pulled them out. I pulled out 2 bulbs. I was unsuccessful at my November attempt to get them to bloom. So what is my next chance? The summer? Should I let them rest now and bring them out in the spring?
No, you can't try to double dip in a year. You're
Darn.
gonna.
Okay. All right, fine. I thought maybe there was a way to get around nature, but it sounds like no.
I mean, I'm sure there's somebody out there that maybe's gotten theirs to bloom twice a year. The thing is, once you get those leaves, you want it to be the happiest it can be. So in the house, the most light you can give it, more southern, bright light. And then in the summertime, slowly transitioning it to a brighter light outside.
Okay, full sun, just as much light as it can get outside.
Outside, I put mine in part sun.
Okay.
Because of the heat and the get at my house, stuff either falls over or it gets too dry. So I do part sun for them.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got a question for Jennifer Fishburne now. This picture will make us all yearn and long for spring and summer months, but this has happened to a lot of people as well. This is about zucchini. So didn't get a name on this when it was an email. Last year, I put zucchini in a raised bed, and as you can see, it soon took over. Where is the best place for zucchini to go? So I'm assuming that they're saying in a bed, in a raised bed, but maybe let's talk about in general, if you want to give them some advice there.
Well, I would be super thrilled if this were my zucchini plant. Let's be honest. That is an absolute beautiful plant, particularly if that's into July or August. Mine are usually decimated by squash bugs at that point. So I would be thrilled with this plant. Yes, it's a little bit big for this space, but what we have to remember about summer squash in general. So I'm going to generalize with summer squash being zucchini, whether it be green or yellow, crookneck squash, patty pan squash. The plants need a space of about 3 feet wide, and they get about 3 feet tall. I did a pretty extensive search, and I really can't find anything that gets much smaller than that. I have actually successfully grown zucchini in an earth box and had really good luck with that if they're wanting to put it in a smaller space area. A raised bed, the problem is that you obviously have a lot of other vegetables planted close together, so it's overtaking, quote, its space. So a traditional garden might be the best for that type of a plant. But I'll also mention in my search, which my search was on the internet, so you can mail order squash seeds. You can also purchase them locally at your hardware stores or garden centers as well. The big difference being that ordering from a garden seed company, you're going to have a much larger selection to choose from. That being said, I don't want to panic our vegetable gardeners out there, but last year something switched, something happened in people, and a lot more people started to garden, and that seems to be carrying over to this year. When I did my search last night, I found out that some companies were already sold out of several different types of squash. I found that some companies had shut their website down for 3 or 4 days because they had too many orders and they needed to process what they had. And I also found another company that was only selling to commercial growers till about mid-February, and then they would start selling to home gardeners. So I don't want to create a vegetable garden panic, but I will tell you, if you haven't yet thought about selecting your vegetable seeds for the growing season, you might want to start doing that now. It looks like there's going to be a little bit of a limited supply. The other thing I'll mention on that is many times in these garden seed packets, we're going to find that they're going to have 20 to 30 seeds. I don't know about you, but I probably only need about 10 of one type of a garden seed, particularly for summer squash. Now green beans, obviously I need a lot more, but in this case, I might not need as many. So I'm gonna call up my good friend, Jennifer Nelson. I'm gonna say, hey, what do you wanna plant this summer? Do you wanna share a package of seeds? That would be my advice to folks out there is find others who have that common interest. And if you wanna try some different things, each purchase a different type and share those seeds.
That is a really good idea. And we had a viewer a couple of weeks ago ask everyone what their favorite tomato variety was. And we kind of went through that, but not with everyone because we can't get everyone. But so today, Jennifer Fishburne thought it would be a good idea to ask you ladies what your favorite summer squash variety is, if you have one. If not, no big deal. So Jennifer Fishburne, we'll start with you since you posed the question.
Well, I wanted to mention 2 things there. Number one, I think my new favorite is Magda. It's a light green summer squash. But I will also mention, not necessarily my favorite, but in the case of being small space, I would recommend lemon drop or lemon squash. It's a very small squash that actually grows in a vine, and you could trellis that.
Oh, I haven't seen those. I have to write that down. And you said something else I'm going to have to look up too, and we can come back to that earth box. So put a pin in that because I want to learn more. Jennifer Nelson, what's your favorite summer squash?
There is one that is an Italian heirloom, and I think the cultivar
Green Tiger.
No, I think it's called Cocozelle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's an heirloom zucchini. I like that one just because it looks different. And off the top of my head, I think the variety is called Gadzooks. It has ridges on it, so if you slice it, it looks like a star shape.
Okay.
This Want something
Yeah,
different.
I think I saw that. Yes, I saw that somewhere. Awesome. Okay, Karen, what about you?
I'm not too big into zucchini. I like zucchini grilled with herbs on the grill in the summer and zucchini bread, but I typically just am really generic looking for one that more is a bush type growing, even though the bushes are a large bush. That's really all I look for.
Okay. All right, we've got another question. I'm going to ask, this one goes to Jennifer Nelson. This was someone who sent in a picture of their cactus and didn't get a name on that one, but it's an email. And the question is, I have been given a cactus that is rather tall and spindly. Is there any help that you can give to help this plant? I know it was not given enough sun. Any suggestions this person said that they would appreciate. So we've got a picture of the cactus and boy, it is skinny.
Yeah, that's
So
a
what are your thoughts on bringing this baby back to life?
well, yeah, she's right that it probably hasn't had enough sun. And I'm not exactly sure what type of cactus this is. I suspect it probably is narrow to begin with, but this is pretty extreme. I would start with putting it in proper sunlight, as much sun as you can give it, and check the pot is really deep. And I was looking at the soil, looks a little dark for a cactus mix. I wonder if it's in the right kind of planting mix.
Mhm.
Cactus mix is usually lighter, usually has some sand in it or something to give it some porosity so it doesn't stay wet for very long. And if it's in a real heavy soil and it seems to be bogged down, you might repot it in a more appropriate mix, but I would let it grow for a while. Anything that's distorted because of no light is not going to magically assume the proper proportions. But what she could do is let it grow in appropriate conditions for a while, get some normal growth, and then propagate that normal section into a new plant. I know it's probably not the miracle cure she was hoping for, but she can definitely, with some work, she can definitely salvage it and probably get more than one plant out of it.
Okay. Good advice, especially if they're, like we've talked before about people who have an emotional attachment to a certain plant, and not wanting to let it go. So if that's the case with this one, there's a way to salvage that. So
Definitely. And then most cactus and succulents are real easy to propagate, where you would take just a piece of it, let that end dry out, or callus over is the term that you hear, and then place that into some cactus mix after it's dried out. You don't want to do it immediately after cutting because that open area will just start to rot.
awesome. Awesome. We've got about 3 minutes left. Did we get everybody's show and tells in? I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Did everybody get those in? Okay, awesome. So before we go, I know everybody's chomping at the bit to start their seeds. In fact, so funny, I've got one right here next to me. So if we could, I just want to hear from you guys. And we've gotten questions multiple times on Facebook and in our email about when to start seeds. So if you could all just maybe take, 30, 45 seconds and just tell us what your process is and maybe when you start. So Jennifer Fishburne, we'll start with you. When do you normally, get your trays out and get things going?
When I remember.
Good answer.
To be very honest, I would say by March 1st, you need to, if you want to start any tomatoes or pepper plants or eggplants, those are typically what most people are going to start indoors for vegetables anyway. I would get those started. And what is most important, of course, is going to be a good quality seed starting mix. Also having some lights that you can adjust or be able to move your trays up or down. Those are going to be some key things, and having good quality seed to start with. But probably around the 1st of March, maybe mid-March.
Okay, Karen, what about you?
I don't start too many seeds. So,
Ah,
but I am this year going to start my own tomato seeds because this is a variety called Bodacious.
Mm.
And last year, it was only by chance that I had a plant of that. There was a rural school that wasn't able to have their plant sale. And so there was on one of those neighborhood apps, I saw an ad
Mhm.
for, help us try to sell these plants. And so I ordered a bunch of plants. They were delivered to my doorstep. I didn't even have to see anybody. And I actually, the Bodacious tomato plant that way last year. And I liked it so much that this year I am going to grow it from seed.
Awesome. So you're more of a nursery gal. I gather.
I don't do too many vegetables, so a lot of my plants are perennials and annuals, and some of the annuals I propagate by cuttings through the winter or
Gotcha.
get plants then in the new year.
Okay, all right. Miss Nelson, what about you?
I'm kind of in the Jennifer Fishburne camp of when I remember.
Whatever.
You know, one of the things, my big hard lessons is just not planting too much. I have really, you're sitting back in January, February, you're like, oh, I can plant a little of that. I can plant that one too. And the longer you have these seedlings inside, the bigger they're growing, hopefully. And you should be moving them up in pot size. If you're going to start, you wouldn't start a tomato now. I would start them in March, like Jennifer said, but I try to look at the minimal amount of time inside because I don't have the space to keep putting things in bigger and bigger pots.
Gotcha.
But also just being reasonable and trying to, I also moved my seed starting into the kitchen last year just because it put it right under my nose. So I didn't forget about them.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thank you very much for your time and talents today. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for watching. And we will see you next time on Mid-American Gardener.